Welcome back to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and we're back with another amazing episode. The goal of this podcast, if it's your first time, is to help you create spaces and build spaces and ecosystems and environments where people thrive. We have someone on here today that is what I call her as the Olivia Pope of Charlotte. She is a trailblazer. She has spent years turning these big ideas into practical action, leading fundraising, building cross-sector partnerships, launching innovative zero waste and circular economy initiatives, and helping ultimately transform Charlotte into a living lab for sustainability. This is somebody that we are featuring this week on our Charlotte leaders and social impact people that you need to meet. When we think about change, when we think about transformation, when we think about innovation, Amy shows up in all of those conversations. And in this conversation today, I'm super excited for Amy to share how she has helped raise millions for climate-focused initiatives and what it really takes to bring public and private partners together around a shared vision, a shared why, and a shared determination to transform people. Amy, how you doing?
Well, hello. I love that. Welcome. I'm going to record it, and then just anywhere I walk in, I'm just going to play it.
That's it. What would be your theme song? Like you're coming out, and what's your theme song?
Okay. I love the song Welcome to My House by Flo Rida.
Okay.
So, like to walk into and be like, welcome to my house. Like if you're walking into the barn, like,
let's go.
Right? It brings the energy. It brings the whole, we're in a house together, like doing great things. Anyway.
I love it. Amy, I have, like I told you earlier, and I know you've booked 24 hours for this conversation, so I really appreciate you. But I have so many questions because when I think about what we have in the landscape of Charlotte, when I think about the nonprofit sector, when I think about just the social impact industry as a whole, there's certain people that claim they do the work. There are certain people that are leading this work. And then there's those people that I wouldn't say above all of those people, but there's people in the back shadows that are really transforming human beings and setting a standard and an expectation on what transformation looks like on the ground. And that's you. Why this work, Amy? Like, before we even get to all of the questions on the who are you and all of these different things, like why this work and what keeps you motivated to continue to keep leading in this way?
Well, it's interesting because I've been the executive director for almost 13 years now. Yeah. And when they hired me for my fundraising. I've always been in sales, fundraising, all that good stuff. Money, asking people for stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't know much at the time about sustainability and climate change. But what I did know is everyone talked about, oh, we need to battle climate change. And they always went to, well, we need to do renewable energy. Mm. And so and this was, like I said, 13, 15 years ago, that's what everyone was talking about. Not saying it's not uber important, but it also left individuals off the hook, right? Exactly. Well, that's the utilities or that's, my home builder or whatever, right? But then learning about the circular economy and really diving in, to me, it was like, okay, how do we give people a toolbox or how can we empower them to do stuff on their own that then collectively would make a big difference? And so I think what I love about the circular economy and what I've been able to do over the last 12 years, 13 years, is give people literally a playbook on how they can be more sustainable in their own lives, which is going to help our kids. It's going to help the planet, but it gives you tangible things, which I just felt like 15 years ago, I couldn't have answered that question.
I love that perspective, Amy. And I'm going to challenge you on this because you've said some words. You've said some words that I feel like a lot of people would look at as buzzwords, right? Mm-hmm. But the beautiful thing that I love about you is that you describe yourself as someone who turns these buzzwords into action. What are some of the biggest sustainability buzzwords people throw around today? And where do you think leaders really miss the mark on actually living these buzzwords out into action?
Well, I mean, if you want to go high level, climate change, right? Everyone talks about climate change. And then immediately people go to the earth is getting hotter. And then when you have a cold day, when it's supposed to be hot, it, challenges everything. And so I think actually one of the more like if you take those buzzwords and when we do tours stuff and I talk to people about this, it's not climate change per se, but it is climate change, but the way that the jet stream is now and you can get into the science, but if you just want to dumb it down, we have these big loops like this that just hold weather patterns over an area.
Interesting.
And so if you look at kind of what we've had, right, it's pulling all that cold air down and it's sat over us and we've been colder this year. So I think translating some of those buzzwords, being more practical, or for example, one of the things I say here is if there's one thing you can do, keep your organic waste out of the landfill. Keep food waste out of landfill. And people are like, what? Why? I mean, it's going to break down. It's going to compost. It's not. It doesn't get oxygen. So therefore, just off gases methane because it gets stuff piled on top of it. Or you scrape your little leftovers into a plastic bag and tie it up and send it to the landfill. There's no oxygen getting in. And suddenly people are like, okay. Think about composting. Think about food recyclers. Okay. I always tell people I don't go to the grocery. I try really hard not to go to the grocery store when I'm hungry because then I overbuy and I end up throwing food away. So I think it's taking the buzzwords that actually matter, but like, what does it mean for you? Like, what does it mean? Like, why did it flood in Houston? Because a weather pattern sat over Houston for 24 days or whatever, right? So how can you change that? Stop putting your organics into landfill. See how we just did that?
That's good. This is like Dan, this is like a science lesson for me. I feel like I missed a lot of these classes in college and maybe in the K-12 education system, but that's another conversation for a completely other day. Dan, I know you have questions, so I see it in your eyes.
Yeah, Amy, I've been to the Innovation Barn, right? I've met the mill, I've met some of the teams that you've worked with, the groups, the organizations that you've worked with. I'd love you to tell our listeners, you talked about community, you talked about innovation. How do you take the mindset that you have and how do you put that into the different organizations that join you that are part of or at the Innovation Barn, and then also in your philosophy, right? Because we can have our own philosophies and views and how we lead, but as we know, things have to be duplicatable, right? They have to be able to be replicated with a mindset that others can take on for themselves. Can you talk about how you lead the Innovation Barn and kind of how you bring that mindset to everyone and what you do?
Well, I mean, I think the key to getting big projects done is collaboration. And I think the key to collaboration is figuring out what the win is, right, for every group involved. And they're not always the same win, but if you can kind of define what it means for everyone, it's easier for everyone to row the boats that way. And so I think my philosophy here is, and not just here, it's kind of exhausting at sometimes, but I'm like, hey, Dan, you need to meet Dave because Dave is doing this. And Reggie, you need to meet Susie because she's doing this. And I'm constantly like forcing people to chat, especially because I can see how this idea, if you two do it, is going to be great. And you need this side and this side. And so I probably every week, people probably get sick of me here going, hey, I have an idea, take it or leave it. You could maybe talk to so-and-so and you could take the leftover food that the potatoes that the bulk gets and you have too many to distribute and maybe Canteen can use it for potato chips, which is one of my favorite foods. So see, it's a win for me getting the potato chips, but it's also using the potatoes and Canteen. So I think it's having those conversations and showing people what a win could look like. And then kind of on them if they want to take it the next step or not. But I'm constantly fostering those conversations.
Amy, talking about community, fostering networking conversations, intentional introductions. Obviously, you have a ton of curiosity, as do Kyle and I. And I think in your role, you have to be curious, right? You said you came into this role with a fundraising style, like a strength, right? But sustainability wasn't necessarily part of your repertoire at that point. So as you look at what you are doing, the community that you're building, the connections that you're making, you're in one of the fastest growing cities in the country, right? And Charlotte is really innovative in some ways and really slow in others. And I'll say I had a conversation with someone today who started one of the first $1 billion startups in Charlotte and isn't really involved in Charlotte anymore. And he said that he just didn't feel like the ecosystem of support for entrepreneurs was there on a large scale, right? It's there on small scale in different areas. But he was like, we need more seed funding. We need this and that. Like there just isn't as much innovation. And I want to ask you, you're on the ground, right? You are working with the startups, the small nonprofits, the really agile organizations right now. What are maybe 2 or 3 things that you are trying to push from the innovation barn to the city and from your network and to your community to kind of move things along with the work that you're doing? Like, what's on your mind? What are your initiatives, maybe is the better word right now?
Well, I think, one of the things I've been thinking about is how do you not boil the ocean, right? You can't do everything. And especially in circularity or sustainability. I mean, there's a new idea or a new opportunity in my case, 1 second, right?
Yeah.
So what I try to do here is we had a study done by Metabolic and it said, focus on organics, textiles, concrete demolition, and plastics. So we sort of take those 4 and then it's the constant, all right, what can we do to move the needle? So if you look at organics, for example, it impacts all of us everywhere we go. You're eating at school, you're going out to lunch, you're eating at your work, you're always having organics around you. So then you look at that whole ecosystem and you go, okay, where are the gaps, right? So yes, you can compost at home, you can do a service, but I live in a condo. It's very challenging. Where am I going to put nasty food scraps? You can bring them to the barn, but I started using the mill, which is a food recycler. So trying to find those solutions. So what are the gaps in keeping food out of the landfill? So like one of the big initiatives that we're working on is, especially in Charlotte's big, beautiful new buildings, because, we don't keep anything old. We tear everything down. We have all these new buildings.
Yeah.
The loading docks are not designed for organics or composting, and no Class A office space wants stinky, rotting food that attracts rodents and all that. So there's a gap in what can you do for composting? So over the years, we've worked with Wells Fargo. We've worked on a number of pilots trying to figure out where to take that composting. And so now one of our initiatives is, could we build like a mobile food grinder heater, get rid of this? So the problems are smells and nasty soupiness, right? And getting it from one place to the next. You don't want some big ugly bin that you're scraping and when you're having an executive dining experience, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at, could we build a little mobile, it's called the scrap cart, and you put all your scraps in it. It looks really cool. It's educational. It's beautiful. It grinds your food down. It heats it. So now you don't have the smell. You're densifying it. And then it actually gets it further along on the composting path. And then it can go to a composter. And instead of taking 10 months, it takes 5 months. So looking at where are the gaps in the things that we have here and filling those, being innovative or creative or just making the right people talk, pulling the Olivia Pope behind the scenes. Just kidding. But that's what I've tried to do, is like, look at those gaps.
Amy, we, when me and my family lived in Philly before we moved back to Charlotte, we had this food co-op called Philly Food Works, and we used it for 3 years, and everything was recyclable in it. We would reuse the boxes. They would pick them up when they drop off the food. It was incredible. And when we came here, we wanted to look for services like that. And there weren't any comprehensive ones that gave us what they gave in Philly, just the broadness of it and the ease of it. And I just imagine if someone could create something similar to that, but then have the scrap side of it. So be able to have maybe a van split in two, where one side could be, you put your scraps, we'll take it, we'll put it on this side of the van, and here's the fresh food on the other side. And then we see you again, like we'll bring this, drop it off, do whatever. But it makes me think about what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think, you were talking about replication, or I get asked all the time, well, how are you going to scale it? Like, that is probably the number one question. And like, I have to force my eyes not to roll back in my head, because talk about buzzwords. How are you going to scale it? So I'll give you an example of like glass. Part of the reason the glass recycling is broken is because of scaling it, right? All these glass recyclers started, coming together and merging. And now you only have a few glass recyclers in the country. And so people are shipping their glass far away to be recycled. So that is an example of, okay, yeah, they're scaling. Now they have this huge building, and now they're feeding the beast from all over the Southeast. So could we look at scaling different? So for us, like our crush truck that we just re-announced is a mobile glass crusher, but how do you make it hyper local? How do you just take care of a neighborhood of glass instead of some huge building that now you have a huge lease, you have huge maintenance problems. Instead, we took it into, and now it's on a Ford 150 Lightning and goes behind bars and restaurants and crushes glass, puts it in the back, and goes into concrete supply company. So I think we need to challenge ourselves when you talk about innovative companies or all that, but also think differently about the systems we have and redesigning, not being innovative in our system thinking as well.
Amy, there's a lot of people that are listening in right now that are super intrigued, like Dan and I, and they don't know who you are, though. And I think that a lot of times people in Charlotte, people in these spaces, we spend so much time stalking someone's professional background online that we don't ask them ever who they are and what makes them tick and what do they really care about and what is the story behind their own innovation that has helped so many people. So who are you, Amy? And what was the slingshot moment that really pulled you back to recognize, like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is a calling that I'm going to lead, and I'm going to use this fire and this grit behind me to be able to build something meaningful?
That's a big question. This is going to sound kind of crazy, but when I graduated college, I moved down to Atlanta, and the reason we moved to Atlanta was me and two girlfriends. We went to Purdue, and we were like, all right, I don't want to stay in Indianapolis or that area. So we looked at Chicago. It was too cold. We looked at Dallas. It's too flat. And Atlanta looked just right. So we moved there without jobs. And I went to the Chamber of Commerce, got the book of companies, and I just literally started, yes, this was back then, people, let's not judge on age, but I did mail out my resume at the post office to take the book. And I got an interview with a company called APCO. So I didn't even get out of the A's. And they hired me. They were a sign company. So doing wayfinding throughout like hospitals, telling you how to get to X-ray or how to get to the emergency room. So I designed those systems, and I was able to also like creatively design them, but also just the pure wayfinding. And it was super fun. And then they said, no, we're going to give you a personality test. And they gave me a personality test, and they said, guess what? You would be great in sales. So we want to put you in sales. And I am 25 at the time. Oh my God, I'm going to be terrible. I'm going to be terrible at sales. But in that moment, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try it. So I went home, told my boyfriend at the time, I'm like, I'm going to do this for 2 years. I'm not going to make any money, but I'm going to learn, and I'm going to use it for future. And so it was dialing, cold calling every day. And I had little strategies, like I couldn't get my second cup of coffee until I made either 40 calls or it was 1 hour. And so I had all these games that I used to play with myself, highly competitive. So playing all these games, but then I loved the game of all of it. I still love probably the game side of, I want you to meet this person. And if you like each other, like I win, right?
Yes.
And I think that moment of realizing, getting out of my comfort zone, way out of my comfort zone, trying something new and figuring out how to make it fit with my personality. That's what I've done for my entire career.
Wow.
And I was, after my first year, the number one sales rep in the country.
Let's go.
So that happened. That maybe reinforced.
Yeah.
But for me, I love to gamify everything.
I love that.
And even if the other person doesn't, I'm in my head figuring out how to win for them, how to make it a challenge. Does that answer it? I mean, that was kind of like a long.
It definitely answers it. And it leads me to my next question.
Oh, well.
I love that you, like Dan and I, are a winner. You have that competitive edge. You have that spirit of competition. And it's not in a mean or insensitive way. It's really putting your best foot forward and really wanting to prove to yourself that you can accomplish at a high level. And the fruit of that labor is what we've seen in Charlotte and what we've been able to see time and time again in your leadership. If your work is wildly successful over the next decade, what will be different in Charlotte? And what do you hope ultimately that people will say about you as the leader behind this work?
Well, if it were wildly successful, if you look at like Austin is weird, right? If we became that place that every startup in sustainability had to go to Charlotte because they could pilot it and they knew that there were organizations that would be willing to invest the time and energy in these new concepts or processes or technology, to be known for sustainability and circular economy as the city where you go, it would transform us in a couple ways. First of all, you would get so many innovators here, a lot more money would come here, but then our city would be more sustainable. It would be cleaner. So wildly successful, we would be that leader. And that also means one of the things I toy with is, can you imagine if every city had an innovation barn? Because I kind of joke about our innovation barn. When it first started, it was like a snowball going down a mountain. It was tiny, but it kept picking up leaves and twigs and snow, and it's just building and building, and those leaves and twigs and snow are people, right? And it's just getting bigger and bigger, and people collectively, what they do matters. And then if you take collectively snowballs all around the country or the world, we could transform our world into a better place, right? So I think wildly successful would be, we be the destination for any company or individual who's interested in the circular economy. And then this barn has lots of little mini barns all over the world that we all work collectively together and share best practices. World domination. Just kidding.
So Amy, what's stopping you?
Nothing.
From doing that?
I didn't say anything was stopping me.
Is that classified?
No, I mean, we're already working with Richmond, Virginia. They've hired us to look at feasibility of a barn there.
Yeah.
We are in conversations with other cities. I have a document that is almost done. I've got to provide some pictures and some stats, but it's why every city should have a barn. It's a little long. I felt like I was writing my thesis. I think it's like 36 pages, but this will give other cities like why you need a barn in your city. So I'm already doing it. I'm well on that path. So it's not a secret. It's just, the snowball of that is kind of small. So it's got
slow moving. The snowball is slow. It's slow moving.
Right now. Yeah.
So, I've been to the Innovation Barn. There's a lot of really cool stuff at the Innovation Barn. Can you tell our listeners why they should come to the Innovation Barn?
Well, I'm glad we have 24 hours because there's a lot of reasons to come to the Innovation Barn. So we break down things at the Innovation Barn in 3 ways: innovation, education, and collaboration. So I'm going to kind of talk about it in those 3 buckets. If you're interested in just pure education, we have tours. So people can come and they can actually see a living lab. So you see aquaponics. And I think aquaponics is such an interesting model for people to see because you have fish who are swimming in water, pooping in water, and that poop becomes the food for the leafy greens that cleans the lettuce that water goes back into the fish tank. So it gives people oh, wow, look how this works together, right?
Yeah.
So education here, we have field trips, all that kind of stuff. So you could come for education. Innovation. We have really cool innovative projects we're working on, from the crush truck. We're working on a plastics project right now where we're trying to take saline bottles from Atrium and we're shredding those. And then we're trying to 3D print with that flake adaptive tools for the kids at the hospital. And that's just phase one. That project has a lot of places to go, but because it's innovative, we're having a lot of trouble with that plastic and 3D printers, but we will crack that nut. So if you want education and you want to get creative, you want to come for that. If you want collaboration, if you are an organization like we have coming up as our Clean the Queen, it is our big week where we do, we have hundreds of volunteers that come and do everything from cleaning up the city to working with the bulb to textile stuff. So if you want to get involved and you want to volunteer and you want to, if you have an organization that wants to collaborate with us, we've got that. So there's so many different reasons. And on top of it, I'm just going to make a quick plug. We have a coffee shop. And it's, in my opinion, the best coffee shop in Charlotte. It's Change Please. It's a nonprofit that takes people who are experiencing homelessness, trains them to be baristas, and then helps find the job and gives them all the wraparound services. We have a cohort going through this week. Friday, they will give free coffee from 9 to 10:30 because they want the trainees to be really busy and get swamped making these specialty coffees. So when I say free coffee, I don't mean your drip. I mean your iced mocha, non-fat, oat milk, whatever, all those like crazy. But so you come for a really good coffee, or you come on Fridays for our podcast that we do live and you learn something about what's going on here, or you come for one of our workshops or our swaps on the weekend. We have a website. So there's a million reasons why you could come here or should come here.
I enjoyed it. Last question before I know Kyle's got something. Do you want to tell people about your dog for a minute? I think you need to tell people about your dog for a minute. Yeah.
He's right here.
Is he? I was going to say, I didn't see his head, so I didn't know if he was with you.
Come up. Yep, there he is. This is Bauer. He is an English sheepdog with a little bit of doodle, and he's the mascot. So he's here with me most days, and he greets people, and he loves being in all our silly videos. But it is one of the perks of being the boss. Make your rules, including dogs.
Amy, you're such a light, and I appreciate you so much. Your energy, your passion, and just your vision for how you've taken these complex ideas, made them so bite-sizable, and you're actually doing the work on the ground. It's just so impressive. What would be your message for other nonprofit leaders? We talk to them literally all the time. I'm sure you connect and collaborate with them all the time that are struggling with the economic landscape, with fundraising, with building relationships. You know, those leaders that are listening in right now, what would be your advice? What would be your words of encouragement for them that are still trying to find their lane?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty broad question. I think in the last couple of years, funding has become very challenging for a lot of nonprofits, you know, especially in this space, because, you know, we've had, I'm not going to say the company, but we were working with a big company, and we're going to have this big announcement last Earth Day. And the administration, there were rumors coming out that the administration was going to make some major announcements on Earth Day, like, I don't know, calling nonprofits and sustainability eco-terrorists or terror. I don't even know. Anyway, so we had to pull like all of this big announcement because this big company didn't want to get punished by the administration. So if you're in some of these diversity organizations that are working on that, or, you know, any of the woke things, funding's hard because people are afraid that if they fund it, they're going to get punished. So I think one of the big things I would say to nonprofit leaders is figuring out earned revenue models, because earned revenue, if you can figure it out, whether like we have really worked in the last 2 years to figure out how we can pay for certain services through earned revenue. So we have 3 free tours a week, but if you're a corporation and you want a special tour that's not during our 3 public, you pay. for that tour. And then we add on, well, not only do you get the tour, you could have a happy hour, team building with your employees. We have our ABC license, so we sell beer and wine. So those happen to be really just easy, good revenue models, and it's insignificant to the companies, that level. But for us, it adds up. So I think for nonprofits, if they can think really creatively, and I used to be on the board of the Arts and Science Council a million years ago, and I was on the granting side, and I would meet with all these nonprofits, and they would give us like they're so passionate about their mission, and everyone should just care about XYZ. Not everyone cares about X, Y, and Z. So there's so many opportunities for the earned revenue side of things that I think nonprofit leaders should get creative and think out of the box. And that will really then take some of the weight off of fundraising and allow you to focus more on the mission. So that would be one thing I would say, but earned revenue is huge.
That is definitely something that we talk about a lot. So I want to give you your flowers in bringing that up, because a lot of nonprofit leaders don't even address that publicly. For the nonprofit leader that is inside this nonprofit culture where I'm afraid of asking for money and earn revenue, oh my gosh, we're a nonprofit, we're not supposed to do it this way. And they're not operating like a business, in lack of a better term. Can you talk to that individual, or at least provide them a framework on how you would assess their organization to even identify what opportunities could exist for their organization?
It's kind of hard thinking just broad scale. So maybe it's easier if I give an example. Years ago, I owned an art gallery, whole other subject, but because I worked at the chamber for years and I had so many corporate relationships, I was like, there are a lot of really good artists that don't think like business people. They want to create their artwork. And then, they're like, I love this piece of artwork. It should sell for $5 million, right? And there's a gap. So one of the things I would work with the artists is, if you know that bunny sells at $100, make 20 of them that feeds your big passion project. So you don't ever have to give up on the big thing, but there's a way to look at the smaller things that can add up. And so another things I would do is, like, for example, I think it was Atrium. They wanted to give all their employees in one of the little sectors artwork. Well, 50 individual pieces of artwork is going to get expensive. So I worked with one of the artists, and they did this giant watercolor, and then we cut it 5 by 5. And then we framed them. And then each employee got a part of a bigger, piece of artwork. So for him, the artist, he sold a huge painting, but it ended up being a small and affordable. So I think you can keep the big mission in mind, but just figure out some of those like easy, smaller items that can add up to helping you on the bigger side. I don't know if that really helps, because it's hard thinking of all the nonprofits out there, but I bet I could meet with any nonprofit and figure out a revenue stream.
Oh no, definitely.
Maybe that's a challenge one day. Like, instead of speed dating, people like nonprofits just come up and go, my nonprofit is, I do native plants. Tell me how I'm going to do an earned revenue. And I'm like, all right, let's go.
Well, for our conference in October, we're planning to have consulting corners that will do just that. And since the conference is going to be virtual, it's going to be very easy for people to schedule 15 to 20 minutes with a specialized consultant where they can literally say, how do I do this? What do I need to do in front of them? But, I love what you talked about with the artist, Amy. And I just want to say this because we've talked about community, cohesion, duplicatable things. That the art was the form of that, right? The fact that it was one piece cut into pieces, which then signified a whole community, right? That all of them were pieces of a community. And then for that artist, it's like that's a really special. I like that.
Yeah. My mom's an artist. My brother was an artist. Art is always going to be a part of my life. And I think art, everyone is creative in some way. So everyone has artistic tendencies. It just may not manifest itself into a painting, or clay. But I think the creativity is where nonprofit leaders can lean into, instead of going, oh, I'm just trying to come up with a business model. No, you're being creative. You're being innovative. It's not you're going against your mission or you're being too corporate. It's creativity and innovation.
You've used the word innovation many times today. And could you define, in your words, what innovation means and why it's so important in the nonprofit space?
I mean, at its core, it's thinking differently than has been thought about before. I mean, that's how I would define it.
Why is it so challenging for organizations to think differently? And what would you encourage them to do, or action steps that they can take so that they can start thinking outside the box?
Okay, this is going to sound like hokey, but strengths finders, like the book Now, Discover Your Strengths. Not everyone has that ability, right? There are people, like there are skill sets I do not possess. And so one of the things I always do is, before I hire someone, I have them take a strengths finder, because I want to make sure that their strengths are not the same as mine. I don't need another me. I need somebody who is great at the things I don't do well, right? And so I think organizations, the first step is looking, do you even have people like that can think that way? Because it's a skill set. And so sometimes I think, companies get so monocultured. They have so many people who are just like them. They either look just like them, think just like them, or both, God forbid. You need a diverse workforce, or at least diversity in thinking. And if it's, bringing in other people outside your organization. But I just think it comes down to, sometimes they want to be, they don't have the skill set, and they don't have the diversity in their organization.
Amy, this has been such a great conversation, and I would love another conversation at your space in the podcast studio.
Room. Yes.
I would definitely, Dan and I will hopefully be there both together on Friday, but I marked it down. We're going to get some coffee, and, where can people find out more information? Like, where can people support your initiative, support your organization, and how can we continue to wrap our arms around the work that you all are doing so that we can continue to transform our community?
Well, there's a list, because we've tried really hard to make it easy for people. So our Instagram, Innovation Barn CLT, we have a new person that literally posts all the time, which is awesome. We have a very funny special literally giveaway on Friday. So everyone should go sign up on Instagram now. And I'll give you kind of a hint. Charlotte, the CRVA had 4,000 pint glasses that said Charlotte's got a lot on them, and they needed to get rid of them. And so they gave them to us, and we went on Instagram. We're like, hey, who wants pint glasses? It went like crazy. People are still asking us. I think in 4 hours, they were all gone. Okay. So we have something similar that someone gave us a bunch of something. I'm not going to tell you what to make you go on Instagram, but Friday, I'm going to be like Oprah, you get a blank and you get a blank. And so Instagram is a good way. We have a newsletter. I just sent it out today. It's once a week or once every other week. It lists everything. Our website, innovationbarnclt.com or envisioncharlotte.com. But Innovation Barn has all the activities, like everything. I'm on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. I try to post once a week about kind of what we have going on. We're on Facebook, and we have this big, beautiful building that has great outdoor space. It's open to the public Tuesday through Friday, 10 to 4, Saturday, 9 to 4, coffee. I mean, come on. I'm giving you every way you could possibly want to get involved, making it easy.
Amy, you are amazing. You're a trailblazer, and I'm so glad to know you. Dan and I are so glad to just be in your ethos and your ecosystem. This was just a beautiful conversation, And I appreciate the way that you're not only carrying a vision, but you really have committed yourself to doing the work and executing and building the partnerships and building solutions that actually serve people and enhance and uplift communities at the same time. If you're still listening in, go follow Amy on all of the platforms. Go follow the Innovation Barn on all of the platforms. Go get you some free coffee on this Friday. Amy, your leadership is a reminder that sustainability is not just about the environment. It's about systems, equity, innovation, and the kind of future that we are willing to build together. One of the questions that we always ask on the Contagious Culture podcast is, what type of culture are you spreading? Culture is in everything and anything, and the culture that we create is the culture that we should be spreading. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. We are here with the Olivia Pope of Charlotte, and we look forward to seeing you all.